I want to share with you about the day that I died. Now, as a scientist and a physician, I should warn you that the way I perceive death is very different than most. Scientifically speaking, death is the permanent cessation of all vital functions, the end of life. And by this definition, I was dead. My heart was broken. My life was not my own. And every single component that's necessary for functioning and being alive had ended. I'm Dr. Sasha, recovering approval seeker, achievement attainer, and now fully resurrected woman, proud mother, and healer of life. And I have come back from the dead to bring back a few lessons that are crucial, not only for our evolution, but to break a dark cloud that hangs over so many of us. I'm not alone. What drove me in the darkness is a disease that is rampant, brutal, and unforgiving. The crisis of mental health, though personal, is an epidemic that affects over 300 million people globally. Now, you're probably wondering how I died. How did this woman, who on the outside, with a beautiful family, successful career, academic honors, a congenial personality, and let's face it, stunning good looks, how did I die? Well, it didn't happen all at once. You see, I lost myself bit by bit to the darkness. It all started innocently as a teenager when I immigrated to the United States from the small island of Trinidad, where I was considered the good girl who everyone liked. But have you ever heard that the cruelest place on earth is a playground? Well, let me tell you, I found this out firsthand. Children can be cruel. Now, in this school where I looked different and I spoke with a distinguishable accent, it seemed like no one understood me or even cared to. I would run up and smile, only to be met with rejection. And so I quickly learned I don't need their help. I can abuse myself. So I started shoving parts of my identity away just so I can fit in to this new play in my life. Little by little, I learned that we have to, make changes in our life, sometimes that we don't like. And so I would hear these voices in my head and I would say, suck it up. Everyone wants to see you smile, but no one really cares about you. Study hard. Your family has expectations of you, and they sacrifice too much for you to disappoint them. Shut up. No one wants to hear you with that stupid little accent. So I learned real quick how to change this. I would go home, and for hours after school, I would watch TV. And I would follow their lips, word for word, and made sure every single word was pronounced correctly. And before you knew it, I sounded just like them. You see, the insidious little thing that happens when you start to reject yourself is a form of self-hatred. If I couldn't get them to like me, I could at least get them to accept me. Self-hatred is not just found in cutting or suicide attempts, but in the subtle forms of self-rejection people practice every single day. It is when we decide to change ourselves in order to fit in. Now, you know what would get them to like me? They would for sure accept me if I got married and had a family. That would show them I'm a good American. So I joined a community that I felt sure I could fit in. Right. It wasn't long before I realized that this community valued women of a quiet and gentle spirit. And if we're being honest, I may have lacked a few of their social graces. But it wasn't so much what they said as what they didn't say. I quickly discovered that much of what I did was frowned upon in this community. You see, these women, they stayed at home so they could raise their children right. But my days were filled with either school or work, striving for a life that ended up making me feel like a bad mom. I was crushed because I tried to attain a standard I knew I could never reach. Those years literally crushed me. I was broken that I could not be with my children. I was so angry that I missed so many of their events. I would stand in their room at night, looking at them while they slept, and I would have tears streaming down my face, torturing myself with one single thought. Do I even deserve them? Now, one thing I never thought about in my younger years was marrying up. And I mean way up. He was 6'9" and I was all of 5'1". And what woman doesn't want to be rescued by a tall, handsome knight to take away all of her fears and insecurities? But soon the nightmare started. Within 2 years of marriage, and despite my hectic schedule, I had to become the breadwinner. And this knight in shining armor could no longer consistently protect and provide for his princess and our family. Shaped in self-regression, groomed with self-hatred, obsessed with pleasing everyone but myself, I pushed myself. Until one day I said, "You need to call the ambulance." Before you knew it, I was fighting for my life in the ICU. I was suffering with excruciating, debilitating pain, and my world, my life came crashing down. For years, I had betrayed my body, and now my body is betraying me. Years of pushing myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially had finally taken its toll. We live in a society that is constantly trying to shape us into versions of ourselves, fragments of ourselves. And what ends up happening is we end up dying 1,000 deaths daily. Pressured by fear, struggling to live authentically, driven to become someone we hate. The pressures of all of this left me so dead inside, and I was filled with depression, anger, and self-hatred. That were I not hospitalized when my body failed me, I may have taken my own life. But this isn't a message of despair. You see, I have brought back for you 3 lessons that if you can tap into these, will absolutely help to set you free. The first thing you need to know is this. It's trauma that activates your human spirit. And when your human spirit is activated, you get to step into who you truly are. You see, that little girl who doubted who she was and lived in self-rejection and hatred, she was always strong. And that woman who just was torn and worried about her role as a mother and struggled with feelings of unworthiness in motherhood, she was always good enough. And thankfully, the part of me that resisted being my true self, the part of me that resisted living authentically, did in fact die. So if you are struggling with anxiety or depression, you need to know that even in your darkest days, you are good enough. And if you feel you are weak, hear me. Your power, your human spirit, is dormant inside of you, and it's fighting to come out. So fight to reclaim your authentic self. The second thing you need to know to reclaim your authentic self is you need to find a tribe. My tribe provided for me a place where I can grow and develop my inner spirit. And it made me realize that everything that I experienced in my life was for an absolute reason. I became thankful for everything in my life. I was grateful for every fear, every tear, every scream, and every wail. And when we've been hurt, it makes it really hard for us sometimes to trust. But here's what you need to do. You need to have an understanding that you were not hurt by all, and there are more people who heal than hurt. If you want to fly and soar, you need to be open to finding your tribe. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was damaged. Yes, I was left for dead. But I needed to believe that there are people out there who would walk with me and who would help reinvigorate my faith in humanity. So find your tribe. And finally, you need to understand that you need to go against the grain if you want to step into who you truly are. One of the things we need to understand is there are people who are fighting to take away our authenticity every single day. Let me tell you one last story. After years of medical problems, I was faced with needing surgery, where the common thing to do is to take opioids for recovery. Here's what I know. Opioids significantly affect your ability to function, is highly addictive, and its use permanently changes your brain. And I need my brain. As a global leader in medical cannabis, I knew that this treatment was the better option for me to use in recovery. And yet I struggled with feelings of peer pressure because of the stigma that is still associated with its use, even as a medical treatment. Ironically, I had to be on stage 5 days after my surgery, where I was going to present to a room full of people on my unique expertise, on how medical cannabis can help treat mental health conditions, specifically emotional and physical pain, which traditional medicine so oftentimes struggles to treat. And it was this medical cannabis, this scorned natural healing plant, that allowed me to get up on stage and share my gift and knowledge with others. My choice was to go against the grain. And if you being you means you need to go against the grain, then you do you. Now, when I'm given an opportunity to give an opinion that is not popular or accepted or widespread, I refuse to be silent. The silence of physicians or their lack of knowledge is perpetuating issues in mental health and chronic pain, instead of using natural ways of eradicating it. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to change you is the greatest accomplishment. So reclaim your authentic self and step into who you truly are.